welcome to the Canadian Atheist.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this chat. Like I said, I've been following your stuff for a while now, and I've consumed so much of it. And so far, I have to say, other than your debates with your friend of mine, Kent, I have to say that April,
Oh man, April.
special. She's special. I forced my wife to listen to some of it,
That
and
wasn't very nice of you.
well, yeah, and the bills will be in the mail because she's now suffering from chronic migraines from slapping. It's been yeah, it's interesting, but I was uh, I was trying to familiarize myself with more of your stuff, getting ready for tonight, and so I was down in our basement, and Shannon's my wife. She's like, "What the hell are you listening to?" And so I turned the volume up a little bit so she could hear it, and she's like, this is a joke, right? Like this isn't real, right?" And she's like, "This has to be a joke, right?"
Did you hear there are no videos of the Earth banging? Did you hear that part of
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
Did you hear Homo sapiens never existed, bruv?
Yep. It's, I mean,
Uh,
it's comical and alarming at the same time.
yeah.
But yeah, it's all very interesting. Oh, I should say, when I said ding dong, you may not know who that is, but that's my affectionate name for Darth Dawkins.
Oh yeah. DD. Yeah.
Yeah, I won't call him by his favorite name because Darth Vader is my favorite Star Wars character.
Mm,
He sullies the name,
very true.
so I call him Ding Dong. Um, I will not engage with him because he is just like, I mean, him and his sycophant band of people, Matt Yester, all those other guys, they're just like, they're like audio chloroform. It's
Yeah.
just
Somebody
terrible.
once described Gary. I think it was in either a TikTok or a YouTube video I put out of me talking to him in the most perfect way imaginable. They said, Gary's not an adult. He's just old. And I was like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a similar kind of a similar story where I was talking with someone in my field, and he said to me, "There's a difference between someone who has 20 years experience in the field and who has 1 year repeated 20 times."
Wow. Yeah.
So kind of similar, right? That he's just lived the same year over and over and over again on repeat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Experience makes you an expert. But if you experienced the third grade 10 times, that's actually not, that's not indicative of expertise. That's indicative of a problem. And yeah.
yeah, yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Okay, so I want to introduce you to our audience a bit and let people get to know you and stuff like that. And I understand you're either recording us now or you're simulcasting. Are you simulcasting to YouTube as well right now?
I almost never live stream, so it'll just get uploaded tomorrow, probably.
Hi, YouTube. Okay, so I wanted to, like I said, introduce you to our audience. So can we get a little bit of your like background story? So um, we'll talk to people like somebody you had on your show recently, and who's been so giving with his time. He's been on our podcast. I joke around that he's got keys to my house. Josh Bowen.
Oh, yeah.
So like if you've heard his backstory, it's just amazing how he was raised, fundamentalist Christian, all this other stuff. So can we get a little bit of background from you and how you were brought up? Like, were you raised Christian, et cetera? And
Yeah, so I'm from South Dakota, Midwest, kind of. It's not the Bible Belt, but that part of the country is sort of like the other Bible Belt. Maybe it's like the Bible corset. I don't know what you call it, the Bible necklace, because it's in the north. I don't know. But I was so growing up until I was about 5, 6, 7. Church. My parents didn't take church like all that seriously. Like we went, but it just kind of seemed like going to school. It was just a thing you did. And my parents split up, but they always remained like geographically very near to each other. And so we just kind of would go back and forth, stay at mom's for a few days, dad's for a few days. And my mom's the religious one. She's a pretty devout Catholic. And so we started just going to church with mom. And my brother and sister and I, we all got baptized and confirmed in the Catholic Church. So I was a pretty regular goer. I had a really, really wonderful time growing up in my church. It wasn't fire and brimstone. It wasn't political in any way. It was just stories and being a good person. And, my friends that were in my class, some of my best friends went to we took our CCD classes together, and I would see them once a week. And so there's this social aspect after church too. And we had this Monsignor Barnett. He was just such an incredibly charismatic and amazing pastor. The whole community loved him so much. So, I don't know, always had a good time. When I went to college, I started going to church less often because, when you start living on your own, you just kind of, there are habits that you just fall out of or whatever. But I still considered myself a believer. I just wasn't much of a practicer, I suppose. And then my deconstruction happened pretty shortly after it wasn't all that short. It was about 2 years after I left college and started becoming a working professional. I was a science teacher for 10 years. And I kind of realized, the movie Religulous by Bill Maher?
Yes.
There's a lot. I've now come to realize that a lot of what is said in that video is like ahistorical and not true, or that documentary, whatever we want to call it. But that sort of was a big moment in my deconstruction, because watching that sort of made me reflect inward on myself for the first time. I'm like, wait a minute, why have I never thought about why what I believe in is different from what other people believe in? And after much searching, I realized that it's not unique in any way. And there were fundamental problems. I always believe, I never doubted really anything in science because of my faith. But I never tried to figure out if those things are negotiable. And when, for example, I heard people lay out the logic of, well, if human evolution is true, Adam and Eve didn't exist, there wasn't any original sin, there's no reason for Jesus to have ever existed in the first place. And that was one of the final nails in the coffin, where I just realized this isn't tenable. And there are excuses you can make for literally anything, but that's not reasonable. So
Yeah, when somebody tells me, like when we come across similar people, obviously, and if someone says to me that, like it says in Hebrews, that without faith it's impossible to please God. If someone wants to accept this as a tenet of faith, cool, whatever. Just don't try to pass it off to me. It's like, oh, this is what happened, right? The whole, that the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate, as your friend of mine, right? And it's like, nah, bro, sorry. We know too much to swallow that and to accept that. And so if you want to say you believe it, fine. I don't care. As Christopher Hitchens would say, just keep your delusions private, and kind of get on with your day. And it's interesting because you said a lot of things that are kind of similar, like parallels to my path too. And it was post-secondary education that kind of did away with the illusions that had been fed to me. I was also raised Catholic. So that did away with the illusions that I was raised as, these are the things that are true. And when you start to look at actual reality, these, like you said, it's no longer tenable, right? And you just have to, move away from childish things, which sounds harsh, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, growing up, Catholics are so unserious about their faith in so many ways, which is nice. I mean, it's kind of like the Jewish community. They're like, we're basically secular,
Yeah.
So nobody ever told me what I should or shouldn't believe growing up, apart from like abortion is bad. You know, there was that was really, and well, some stuff like around gay marriage every
Mhm.
now and then too, standard bigotry. You know, but no,
Yeah.
I remember one of my best friends, Philip. He lived across the street from me, and we would play like with Jurassic Park dinosaur toys a lot when we were young. And I remember this very vividly. I don't know what church he went to, but we were playing with dinosaurs, and he said, "Did you know that dinosaurs and humans lived together 10,000 years ago?" And I just looked at him like, the fuck are you talking about? And I was like a fourth grader or something when that happened. I feel like, you know, if I had been told though, I mean, who knows? I may be assuming too much. I'm what, holding myself in too high of a regard here, perhaps. But I want to say that, you know, if I'd have been introduced to those ideas like ultimatums or whatever like that, I probably would have deconstructed a long time before that. Another thing that was instrumental in me walking away from the faith is when I started talking to, like, meeting people that are Christian but think differently. I mean, I can remember in college, I did track and field, so we'd go on these really long bus rides every now and then. I was talking to, we had this little circle. We were talking, I don't know why we were talking about religion, but these guys that I was like best friends with, we were talking about Christianity, and I don't know how this got brought up, if they were talking about like homosexuality or something. But I remember saying, if you think that, then you think Jews go to hell. And my friend turned to me and was like, yeah, they do. I was like, what in the fuck is this? Like, if that's what this is, then I'm not this. And that kind of thing. And also the fate of all Native Americans pre-Columbus is to be in hell forever, simply because they never heard of a story that happened thousands of miles away, thousands of years ago. That was just that was also very big in me starting to think about, does any of this make any sense? Because that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting. So one of the first funny things is, if you've ever looked into Mormonism, then you'd know that the pre-colonial Aboriginal people were just Jews that traveled here, by boat in 600 BC, right? So I mean, so they're still Jews and they're going to hell anyway because they deserve to. But the other thing that's very funny, and this is why everybody listening to this, all of our regular listeners, you need to go check out Eric's channel, Planet Peterson, because he's got just some amazing content with some really, really funny guests that he's had on. And you said something a minute ago about doing track and field. And the first thing that flashed back to me was, was the guest you had on. And I think it was, his tagline was, "Don't make me prove to you why I'm an alpha."
Oh yeah, that guy was so
And it was like, "Let's
ridiculous.
compare arms or something,
Yeah,
bro."
show me. Yeah, when he got I talked him into a corner or something, or I think I asked him to provide a sliver of evidence for anything he's saying. And he's like, "Can we compare stomachs? Show me your biceps."
Yeah, very funny. Very funny. So, like, honestly, for everybody listening, Eric has just a ton of great content, and he brings a ton of humor to what can be really, really divisive topics and stuff like that. But you always tend to insert humor into it. Now,
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
it's insulting the fuck out of people, but hey, like I think it's warranted. Like, in so many ways, because if somebody says to me, like our friend again, the charlatan Kent Hovind, and I say that very specifically because he there aren't a lot of people, I think, in the Christian community, and I firmly believe this, that know that they're lying, but I believe that Kent is one of them.
Oh yeah.
Patriot University, you can Google pictures of it. It's a tricked out double wide in the desert somewhere. Um, it's just it's not an actual thing. And he knows he is lying to people, but I'm sure that, like, I'm convinced that most of the people have just been duped into believing this thing. and
Yeah.
they haven't done things like you did when you said you actually started questioning these things.
Mhm.
And these are people that need our care, they need our concern, and some of them need a gentle hand out of this thing because they've just been lied to for a long time.
You know what um I want to say this because I thought about this just yesterday. So what's really disturbing about the people that listen to Kent's material is how incredibly dogmatic and rigid they are in it. Now, you can be dogmatic and open-minded at the same time. That is possible. Science gives us excellent reasons to believe that our descriptions and explanations for what we observe in the natural world are true, and we do discount alternative explanations, but we are open-minded to them. That's where you can be. Dogmatism isn't the same thing as closed-minded. They're technically very different, but they're not like this because Kent has never given anything other than what could be called a complete embarrassing performance, right?
Yes.
Now you can even, and here's the what I was talking about between audiences. Because this happens, I mean, I debated one of the world's most infamous flat earthers yesterday, and I'm getting huge amounts of negative feedback from that. I very clearly, the guy said nothing of substance. He got nothing right. And he just got dog walked throughout most of the debate. But there are things I could have done better. And there are a couple of mistakes that I probably made. And I'm hearing about it a lot from the people that support me. With Kent, literally, Kent could have a 2-hour debate where he literally doesn't even finish a single one of his sentences. And not because he's being interrupted, because he's just completely a moron. But if he snuck in one little insult or something like that, or if the other person insulted him one time, the only thing you would see as feedback would be, oh my God, the guest Kent was debating was so incredibly rude, or oh, it was so incredibly satisfying the way Kent got him with, whatever. It's just, I mean, it's unbelievable. Like the first time I debated Kent, he told me that according to me, it's okay to fuck your own dog. And then in response to that, I said, you let a child molester into your park and you beat up your wife, which are true things. And
Yeah.
when I went to watch the video on his channel to see what people were saying, and they're like, I can't believe Planet Peterson started off with an ad hominem attack. I was like, first of all, it wasn't. But second of all, like, did you not see how, I mean, this is like somebody slapping somebody in response to they shot and ate their child, and people being like, I can't believe he slapped him. That was completely uncalled for.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So you're probably not aware, but when Kent was on the podcast about 4 years ago, it was an interesting experience, mostly until he got on. Speaking with Rhonda, I'm not sure if Rhonda still does his stuff down there or not, but she was the woman who kind of set everything up and facilitated him coming on. And other than the fact that at that time he had a little gerbil powering his internet going around the wheel because it kept on dropping in and out all the time, I very specifically said, because I knew what his shtick was, right? All he wants to do is talk about evolution. All he wants to talk about how is, it rained on the rocks and the rocks came alive. I didn't want to talk about that shit. So when he came on, I said, all I want to do is talk about God and your belief in God. And he tried every 45 to 60 seconds to get back on but you think, we're all related to amoebas, right? And I'm like, and what I said to him several times is, Kent, we can have a second discussion about evolution, but right now I just want to talk about why you believe in God. And he couldn't do it. Motherfucker could not do it.
Wow.
Because he's always got to slip back into that script because it's all he's done. And I think it's just, hard. Like his SSD has been so written that it can't overwrite anymore. It's just got that information on it all the time now.
Yeah. Like we call that in the online sphere where I exist, we call that like debate brain or whatever, but, which he's been doing that since the 90s. So yeah, it's possible that he doesn't even realize what he's doing. So he is a liar. However, I do think that he genuinely thinks evolution is false and that young Earth creationism is true. He just now know, and I'm sure 30 years ago he just didn't, like, because of his ignorance, he asserted that he knew everything he needed to know, and that's how he can also know that the opposite isn't true. But he's talked to so many people, and he's had his misconceptions explained so many times that he has to know that his talking points are completely idiotic. But he simply is incapable of abandoning his faith. And I don't know, we all probably have something like that going on in us with respect to any kind of miscellaneous thing. But yeah, for him, it's just so incredibly obvious.
Yeah, I doubt that either one. Like, I know for myself, and I feel pretty safe in speaking for you that you don't have a whole bunch of you don't have a dinosaur Adventureland equivalent of people willing to slave for you all over a lie.
No,
Like he,
no,
right?
yeah. Yeah,
So
like I said, I wouldn't get away with it from my audience. So
yeah. So why? So, okay, back it up a little bit. About 7.5 years ago, I was downstairs watching a video on YouTube, yelling at my computer screen about something. And my wife said, "You've got so much to say. Why don't you just do a podcast or something?" So I call my friend Dean. I'm like, "Dean, I'm starting a podcast. You want in?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." And the rest is history. What got you started?
I so uh vanity a little bit, but with a purpose of making the world a better place. So I wanted to, starting back in like 20, ever since like 2016, 17, I wanted to be like a YouTube teacher personality kind of person. Like I watched Crash Course videos and I thought I could do this. I really, really think that I could. And it started off as I created instructional videos for my students. There's this concept called a flipped classroom, where instead of giving your students homework, you have them consume the like material you would do as a lecture in class as their homework, so that when you're in the classroom, you can do hands-on kind of stuff with them.
Okay.
And for science, that's a huge advantage. So I started doing that. I started creating lectures I was teaching earth science and biology at the time, and I had no freaking idea what I was doing. And the videos they were so awful. I watched them a few years after I made them. I was like, oh, I remember these being good, but this is awful. So I was doing that. And then after I moved to California, shortly after the pandemic started. And so I was just like shacked up in my house basically. And so what I did was I decided to recreate all my curriculum, and I did a good job this time with those. And then I started doing just random educational videos, just stuff that interests me, stuff that I think is cool. And I was doing that before the pandemic started too, in the hope of maybe like one of these videos will go viral, and then I can be a guy that talks about science or like whatever, like not necessarily political, but like kind of political, cultural stuff that interests me that I think is important. And none of that ever went anywhere. And then I downloaded TikTok during the pandemic, and I tried making like short educational videos, or just like kind of like fun educational videos for that. Like I did a video on one of the first things I ever did that went viral. Was I made a video on how long would it take for Earth to disappear if 1 billion kilograms of it per second disappeared. And it's cool because whatever you think the answer is, you're not even close, because it takes almost 200 million years for Earth to disappear. And that video went viral, and I had a bunch of followers. I was like, okay, well, this is cool. So I started doing like throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what would stick. Like in my heart of hearts, I wanted to be like a pure educator. But what I realized was the live debates and reposting those, that was what the people wanted. So that's I just kind of slowly got into doing that more and more often. But I got really lucky at the start, because I had several different videos get many hundreds of thousands to a few million views that weren't really, they were kind of like different sorts of things. And that's what got me the following that I think got me the attention to then lead to the kind of snowball that I suppose happened after that.
That's very cool. That's very cool. So, okay, you talked about the online curriculum, but and I want to get to your book in a little bit too. But you also, and it may have been from an older video that I watched, depending on how the algorithmic gods displayed them to me. But you've posted videos talking about how you have online courses available for
Oh
people
yeah.
to take. Is that still a thing you're doing?
Well, those are actually those videos I was talking about earlier. I decided to put those on a website that people can buy. So yeah, that's on Teachers Pay Teachers, and
Right.
that's an astronomy curriculum, a biology curriculum, and an earth science curriculum. So I'm not currently working on any new stuff sort of in that direction. I don't have time for it. I mean, I could, but the I don't think I would see any dividends that would make it worth my time for doing that. So
Oh, okay. So you said you taught science for 10 years, I think you said. But now, so like, are you still teaching, or does YouTube pay the bills right now?
so this is an extremely long story, and it doesn't really have anything to do with with anything. But the short version is, last year in May, some anonymous serial stalker started attacking me and spreading a bunch of lies about me, and he recruited several people to join in on this thing. They found out where I live and work. They contacted the school I work at and told them all these stupid lies about me, like this like allegations of like bullying children online and like talking inappropriately to people or whatever. All of it was false, and I even, they used like screenshots of things and doctored them to say stuff that it doesn't say and make up just completely invented context for everything.
Okay.
So the school, I met with them, I spoke with them, I showed them I proved to them with like the photographic evidence and stuff that literally all of this stuff these are complete lies. Well, the school, in what I maintain as a criminal act, they found something tangential, something completely unrelated. They said that, well, Mr. Peterson, you admitted to us that one time you told somebody the first name of one of your students. That's a violation of student confidentiality, and we are letting you go, effective immediately. Which is a complete lie. I did one time say the first name of a student, but that is not a violation of FERPA. That was a PR stunt because they were like, well, the rumor is out there. It was said. And even though Peterson proved that this stuff is a lie, the school actually told me we didn't even look into the accusations beyond the claim that these people made. But it was just a PR stunt because, like, well, we can't ever quelch, whatever, put out the rumors. So we'll just have to fire him and let's make up an excuse. And they did. So if I could find a lawyer, I'd take everything they have, but I can't.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah. Pretty weird.
Well, I'm sorry that happened to you. That's terrible and disgusting.
Yeah, it really is. And it was, the whole thing started over some cancel culture bullshit stuff that's just so incredibly gross and stupid. But anyways, yeah, for like the last 6 months, it's all my income's been online, but I did just recently get a new job, and because of creeps on the internet, I'm just going to keep that the details private.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you sent me all kinds of personal stuff earlier, and I'll fully put that out later without your knowledge or consent. But don't worry about it,
Thank you.
guys. It'll all be available online soon. Don't worry
Yeah,
about
if
it.
I don't know, it can't hurt me.
Exactly. Exactly. So okay. So that's very cool. And the whole cancel culture thing. It's funny. Like as a as a Gen Xer, I'm just like, I don't give a fuck. Like I have very low tolerance for shit like that, and I will say inappropriate things at inappropriate times. And so much so
Yeah.
my wife just goes, yeah. I have a bunch of shirts, so I wear my atheism on proudly on my sleeve, both with actual shirts, tattoos, and other things. And what Shannon will sometimes say is like, do you have to wear that one? Because I have some she doesn't care about, right?
Yeah.
Like I have one that says good without God. She's totally fine with that.
Yeah.
But I have another one that said that's the subtitle to Hitchens' book, God, or God is not great.
Yeah.
Right? She's like, do you have to wear that one? And it's big, fucking bold. She's like, please, please. And then then she just gives up and she's like, she pretends she's a Muslim woman. She walks 20 feet behind me,
Nice.
um, or ahead of me. Okay.
What's your speaking kind of
Yeah.
along those lines?
Yeah.
What is your feeling with the sort of the way atheism has now seemed to be completely wrapped up and absorbed into left-wing identity politics? Like, I'm very much a left-wing, liberal, progressive person, but like the litmus testing and like the purity testing and the almost like dogmatism, the 10 commandments of leftism, like thou shalt not ever say something bad about blank blank blank, has just become, it's been odd, and I really hate it.
Yeah, I got no time for that shit. So I like actually. So I've been fortunate enough to meet. People say don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough. Like I sat at a table, not just alone, but with a few other people. Had lunch with Richard Dawkins. Lawrence Krauss has been on the podcast.
Oh wow.
I've met lots of people, and those two names that I mentioned, both of which have fallen kind of out of favor. I never got a chance to meet Christopher Hitchens, but I really believe he would have been an exception to that rule.
Yeah.
He was in Toronto debating Peter Blair a bunch of years ago. He was still sick at the time, but he was, I guess, doing pretty well. And I couldn't get there. It was part of the Monk debates. Peter Monk is a huge philanthropist in Toronto, and he holds this series. And he brought Tony Blair and Christopher Hitchens together to do a debate. I couldn't get there, and I was very upset. He died maybe 8 months after that. I like what he said. Sorry, it's a very long preamble to get to what I was going to say. In one of the discussions he had once, he said, I'm an atheist. You can't tell anything else about me. You don't know whether I beat my wife or whether I'm kind to my children. And I think that's very, very true. You can be an atheist. Like atheism. So a lot of things they'll say, it's like something is like a fork or a shovel or something like that. And I call atheism one chopstick, right? It's a single prong issue.
Yeah.
It's, do I believe in God? Some people take that. Like I actually take the harder philosophical approach. Like I'm convinced gods do not exist. I don't fall into the kind of lacktheism category. I'm very much a hard atheist. And I accept the burden of proof that places on me. And I think I can meet it given I've read the Bible. But no, I mean, it's like, and you talked about being very progressive left. Like, yeah, I'm so far left, I damn near fall off the edge of the planet, if it was flat. And, very, very progressive, human rights. I believe healthcare is a human right, all those, kind of leftist talking points. But yeah, like I know lots of people that believe all those things and who also believe in a deity. So I think they are mutually exclusive. Like you cannot just lump them all together. Yes, you're right. You hear the talking points, this atheist, leftist, communist, socialist, blah, 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 all demonstrating these people have no idea the nuance of definitions and uses of words. But yeah, I think those things are very much separate things.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to belabor this too long, but like I'll just give an example of like if I have a debate with a Muslim and I upload it to YouTube and I create a thumbnail depicting like a typical, or I guess we could say stereotypical Middle Eastern guy, and I try to like make him look dumb or something like that. I mean, I don't even do that because I know the way people will respond. But I had a video I uploaded months ago. The red eye meme where like somebody's like angry and so they put those like laser red eyes over them.
Like this Superman eyes or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had AI create just an image of a Middle Eastern looking dude, and he was it was like cartoonish, not realistic, and he was giving like angry kind of look, but he didn't I didn't give him like cartoonishly gross exaggerated features like Disney was doing with black people in the 40s, you know. There's nothing like that. And then I did the red eye thing, and this person commented, that thumbnail's pretty fucking racist. I was like, what could that possibly, like, if it was like, I don't understand why we can't be careful enough when trying to criticize that religion or people from there that believe that, but you can just you can say any despotic thing you want about Christianity or whatever. And it was so, I just hate that shit so much. And so what I did was I pinned that comment to the top of the video, and then I replied and I said, on a scale of 9 to 11, how racist was it? Just to show, like, don't come in here with bullshit like that. I don't fucking care. And I was going to say double down, but it's not doubling down because the thumbnail isn't racist. But if you do that, I'm going to mock you and make it even worse from your perspective, because I want you to be, I want to shame you, and you're in your attempt to shame me, because this is so stupid.
Too is Islam is not a race.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, like Islam, Muslim, those are not racist. Like it's, I mean, you can, it's like you really want to piss off Christians, show a dark skinned Middle Eastern man and say this is most likely what Jesus looked like.
Yeah,
and everybody fucking clutching their pearls and falling over. But no, yeah, I would, I'd very much be in your camp. I would double down and be like, bitch, Islam isn't even a race. Come at me.
Yeah.
And because also everybody loves the pejorative of bitch being thrown around. I reserve the comment bitch specifically for men. Like, I won't call a bitch, but I'll call a man a bitch all day long, just to piss them off. Just to piss them off.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, okay. All right. So we hinted at it a few minutes ago, but rational answers to stupid questions. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so it was 2022? I don't remember. It must have been the fall of 2022. I just had this passing thought. I was like, I think I've heard everything. So should I just compile this into a book? And I remember I made a TikTok video saying that, and people said, yeah. I was like, I've always wanted to write a book. I just had never had any clue what it would be about or whatever. And then I thought about it, because I've thought about writing a science textbook before for like biology and earth science, because those are like my two favorite subjects to teach. So I was like, you know what? I think I know enough information that I could write, and it's sort of like a handbook. It doesn't have chapters. It doesn't tell a story. It's just the things you commonly hear people say with regard to evolution, the flat earth, the Big Bang, science in general, young earth creationism. It's just the most common anti-scientific talking points in those categories, and then a comprehensive refutation of each of the claims. So I started working on that in February of 2023, and I finished the book by November of that year, and it went on sale last year, 2024, in February. So like almost exactly a year after I started writing it, which is a pretty quick turnaround for a book, but so yeah, it's sort of I think of it more as a handbook. But even if you don't, if you just like learning about science, then the book is great, because it just has, there's a huge amount of information in there that you can learn. If you don't ever plan on debating anybody, most people don't like confrontation. So it doesn't have to be for that purpose. If you just want to learn more about evolution, or because what's funny is when I first started like debating people online, I didn't actually like. I knew what the facts were. Although I've learned so much doing debates because I've been forced to research and do things too, but I didn't know how to articulate the truth all that well because it was kind of like I was just so flabbergasted that like why would you say something so incredibly stupid because and my fallback or like my default take was basically it's common knowledge that what you're saying is false. But you can't get away with that like in a debate. You can't just say, well, it's common knowledge that what you're saying isn't true. So being able to justify the beliefs that I have has been really satisfying. And so, again, for the book, if you don't even plan on debating, it's a great resource for that reason.
Yeah, I think that I think it could also be useful for people who want to have those um, possibly uncomfortable conversations with members of their family as well,
Right.
right? Um, Greta Christina wrote a book similar to that because like I think it's called "Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist," right? And like basically how to come out to your family, and she's a great author as well. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of good tools that could arm somebody with. What's if you had to pick? I don't know, just as a throwing a dart at the wall. What's your favorite argument that you hear online that's like where your mouth starts watering? It's like I love this one. I can't wait to tear this up.
You know what? Lately, it's been fine tuning, and that's because recently I looked really hard into the counter responses to it because fine tuning's intuitively a very powerful argument. And I now love when I actually kind of hate it. It's funny. The thing you said, my favorite things when people brought up, the reaction that they elicit in me is typically, oh, for fucking Christ. Okay. First of all, but though I actually do love those ones because I don't know. They actually are fun to talk about. So anyways, I did a real deep dive on the, counter responses to it. And I realized that fine tuning is actually a really horrible argument for a lot of kind of complex reasons, and that those complicated reasons are fun to dissect. But other ones are when flat earthers say water always finds its level. It's so satisfying because they've set just the most devastating trap for themselves. Because all you do is ask them, do tides happen? Yeah. Do high and low tides happen at the same time? Yeah. So water isn't level. Thank you. And the panic that comes from that is just, it's so incredibly.
But.
Yeah. So, well, what I meant was, or, oh, yeah, but you still can't find water curving or like just something like that.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that.
I also have fun with fine tuning. What I'll typically say is, and they're not my arguments. I just regurgitate the arguments that other people way smarter than me have already put out there.
Yeah.
All the dials tuned, right? This fine tuning. Frank Turek has always done a terrible job at it. And you say, well, if you like, yes, all those dials are tuned what we have now. But who's to say if you tuned every one a little different, you just wouldn't end up with something else. You may not have this,
Yeah.
but there's no reason to think that you wouldn't have anything, that you'd have total chaos. But actually, the one I like using even more than that is fuck the cosmos. Let's just look at our little speck of dust, right? We're on this rock. 3/4 of the water of is covered in water we can't drink. Only something like 14 or this stat I saw was like between 11 and 14% is inhabitable by people due to climate restrictions, either way too hot or way too cold or these other types of things. And like all these different things. And it's like, and you're calling this fine tune?
Yeah.
Like this is the work of this perfect God of yours? Fuck, like any team of engineers could sit together with a blueprint and make a better one than this.
Yeah, I think in my book, I do talk about fine tuning in my book, but I hadn't done that deep dive before I wrote that. I'm pretty sure I don't even remember it well off the top of my head, but I bet if I reread that piece in the book, I'd be like, ugh. Whenever I do my second edition, I'm going to completely redo that part, I think. But I do raise some things that are just very obvious problems for that, such as kind of like what you said. I mean, I say something like, a similar claim in there is that life is so complex that it had to have been intelligently designed. You know, it's like, if we can think of even one way that we can improve our environment or our biology, then that's catastrophic for the claim that we were created by a perfect designer. It literally just makes no sense. One of the other things I say for fine tuning is, a fine tuned universe this is one of the biggest weaknesses about it, is it's an argument that life requires no miraculous intervention to exist apart from the creation of the universe. Because if the constants in our universe are finely tuned for intelligent life, then life is an inevitable consequence of the universe. It looks
Right.
the exact same as a universe where there is no deity that exists. So what I say, I kind of lost my train of thought, but another thing I go into is like, look, what a miraculous explanation is actually pretty easy to think of. Like, if Earth were as close to the sun as Mercury, but the temperatures on Earth were exactly like what they are, then that would have no natural explanation. It would it
Right.
would it would completely defy all reasonable natural any explanation. But that's not what we find. Instead, we find, and speaking of like things people say that make me go, oh yes, I'm so glad you said that, is Goldilocks zone arguments, which are kind of like fine tuning arguments, but those are so just unbelievably dumb. Because you just point out to them, that we find life in boiling hot water, and in temperatures over 100 degrees below zero, and buried under 2 kilometers of solid rock in the ocean floor. Like, the range of temperatures for when people say Earth is perfect for life, it's basically the same argument. That's just so. They learn something right after they say that, because it's so easy to be like, okay, here are 5 reasons why that is completely asinine of you to say, and then,
Yeah,
oh, so
100%.
you think we came from monkeys, huh? It's usually the response.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Lawrence Krauss actually said something interesting about that. He said it's it's no great surprise when we find ourselves existing in a place we can exist.
Yeah.
To what you said. Like, if we were living somewhere, like if we were breathing methane and walking around hunky dory, that could be that, like, that's miraculous, because we can't breathe methane. And now if we were, now you got something to talk about.
Hmm.
Again, yeah, really, really, really interesting. Um, okay, who's is there anyone out there in the debatosphere that you're like, you can't, well, like, you'd give not like, like, there's nothing I wouldn't give. Like, I'd give my left nut to get my claws into this guy or this gal. Like, who do you?
Um, Andrew Wilson kind of comes to mind. I actually talked about this in a Ask Me Anything video I put out not that long ago, because he's really well known, but he's probably intelligent, but he's never once said anything that made me go, oh, good point. And for the most part, like, he's debated people like Destiny before, and yeah, I don't know who else on our side. Well, tried to debate Matt Dillahunty, that obviously didn't work, but for the most part, he just talks to 19-year-old girls who have literally no introspective skills whatsoever, and their heads are so full of hot air and they know absolutely nothing. That I think it gives a sense of like, well, this guy's always owning the whatever those people are supposed to be, leftists, libs, or whatever. And it's like, you've never talked to anybody remotely intelligent. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm the best person to do it. But it would be interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had people ask me, like, would you engage with him? I'd be like, no, I wouldn't give him the time of day. It's like, I wouldn't. it's like what I completely agree with what you said. And when you see when you see those types of videos where people like that, or people like, what's that other numbskull that kind of walks around the same area as he does? There's Andrew Tate, there's Andrew Wilson, and it's that other guy. Always goes around to college campuses talking to people.
Oh, Steven Crowder.
Yeah, yeah, those guys
Yeah.
too. It's like they're not when people watch those videos and people in that sphere of influence watch those videos and think they're doing really great. It's like punching down, and it sounds horrible, but I really think they are punching down because you said it. Like these people like aren't terribly introspective,
Yeah,
right?
it's a business decision.
Yeah, and they're punching down and stuff like that. It's like that's why you're not seeing. I don't think you see a lot of these people wanting to engage with people, and you are certainly smart enough to take him on. Um, but I I don't think he'd go for something like that. So hey, if you do if you do watch our content or listen to our content and watch Planet Peterson, he wants you. Um, but yeah, it's like that kind of thing. But I don't know if that would happen. Like I don't think he'd be willing to get kind of in the ring with somebody. And you mentioned the whole conversation with Dillahunty. I think that was purposely. I think his performance was purposeful,
Oh yeah.
purposely flare things up and to throw Matt off kilter. And Matt and I are not the hugest fans of one another. That's a different story. But it was still a dick move on his part to go where he went in that conversation.
Yeah, yeah, it was a thinly veiled personal attack is really what it was. The whole thing was to set up the, have fun with your husband jab at the end when he left and shit like that. And nothing he said had anything to do with, like, Matt was right. I don't know. I don't think Matt should have just walked off, because it's not like Matt isn't, I don't want to say disingenuous, but it's not like Matt isn't always respectful or whatever to people he talks to either. There's a word that I'm trying to think of, but I can't remember it. But but at the same time, it's like that Andrew came there and just nuked the debate with something that had nothing to do with it. So I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, 100%. Is there anybody that you would not give the time of day to?
Do you know who Made by Jim Bob is?
Yes, I've seen a good number. So I'm sure you're familiar with Breakfast Tacos.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know him.
Yeah. So Taco was on the podcast a few months back, and we were chatting about that. And Made by Jim Bob came up, and yeah, like he seems like a pretty. You use the word disingenuous. He seems like a pretty
Very.
dis.
He. So I I didn't realize it right away, but I'm now 1,000% sure that I think Jim Bob does really believe that, like, atheists or people that hold to materialism or naturalism, like, I think he genuinely believes in, like, the philosophical arguments, like naturalism can't give an accurate accounting of reality because it can't prove itself, or it can't appeal to itself, or it can't describe abstract things because those can't be grounded in materialism because they're not made of material, like whatever, shit like that. But, like, literally his whole thing is atheism is gay. That's like if you go and watch his recent videos, he's got a few recent videos of me, and, like, he drew a cartoon of me and I'm wearing, like, a LGBTQ it's like a half pride flag, half, I don't know what the other thing was on it. Like, he mocks me in the video, and he's like, he repeats what I said with a lisp, and then he says "thlurpy thlurpy" at the end. I was like, what? And then I read the comments, and, like, the top comment was, another day, another gay atheist debunked. I was like, oh, this is like the Jesse Lee Peterson thing. A lot of
Yeah.
people think that that's real, that Jesse Lee Peterson really is a white supremacist and whatever. And a lot of the things Jesse Lee Peterson says he thinks, but the whole point is to just make people angry, And the joke is that it's Fight Club. You don't talk about it because you try to rage bait them in, and then we get some sort of sadistic pleasure out of that. So once I realized that about Jim Bob, I was like, I'm never going to debate you because I know that you're not being serious. If I knew how to be a troll master, then I would do it and then just, troll him back or something like that. Like try to make him as uncomfortable as possible. Like the whole debate, just be like, you know what, Jim Bob, I think you're kind of hot actually, just to try to like make him miserable the whole time. But no, I'm not going to give him the time of day.
Yeah, we've had similar comments during. We do our best during Pride Month to have members of the LGBT community on to talk about relevant issues and things like that. And I'll like every episode that goes up during Pride Month has the Canadian Pride flag, which is just the maple leaf with Pride colors on either side.
Right.
It gets flown at Toronto City Hall. It gets flown in Ottawa. We're generally pretty accepting. I fly a pride flag in June outside my house too. I don't give a fuck. And I am very straight. But like, who cares? I just do it, in solidarity. My daughter's a member of the LGBT community. And so I do it in solidarity. But yeah, and people will post the comments, it's like, oh, it's again, like you said, another, gay atheist, another guy, keep the kids away from them. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, whatever helps you, whatever helps you sleep at night doesn't impact my life at all.
Yeah. The funny thing about that is the phenomenon of, this is kind of a, like in the right-wing political environment, we usually say every accusation is a confession. And this also happens with like preacher, like somebody in my Discord just shared a link of, there are these two pastors, like in one of the Carolinas, I think maybe, and they just got arrested for, molesting countless people. And it's like, yeah, why is it that they're always guilty of what they're talking about? Like Matt Walsh is 100% in the closet, people like that. But so it's kind of like, I guess I'm a privileged person, so I don't have to worry about like, when somebody throws those accusations, I'm like, well, I'm literally not, so I don't care what you're saying. But I actually derive a little bit of satisfaction out of it, because whenever they say it, I'm just like, man, you don't know it. But so it's almost like I don't care when you say it, because it's almost like you're telling on yourself, or there's a high probability that you are. So when I hear people do that stuff, I'm like, oh, you're precious. And again, I'm in a position where I don't have to care because it doesn't personally affect me. I can understand other people not thinking it's so cute that pieces of shit like that exist, but I don't know. For me, I'm just like,
do the same thing when I chirp back at people in the comments. I say like, "Oh, sweetie," or "Oh, honey," and stuff like that. And because that the blood is just boiling inside them, right? That they can't they can't stand something like that, because again, but you're 1,000% right. Like being in that privileged position, right? Like, I mean, I think I'm pretty much you and I are in the same boat. Like I have all of the pieces of the privilege pie. Right. And I try to just be as understanding as possible that a lot of the people I'm communicating with, they don't have as much of it as I do. Anyway, I'll get down off my soapbox now.
Have you seen that video of Stephen Fry debating with that African? I don't know if he was a guy in government or the mayor of a town or something, but they're talking about homosexuality.
Yeah, there was.
It was actually so funny the way Stephen trolled him. He said, "You should try being gay. It's fantastic." And the guy goes, "I will arrest you."
Yeah, like, I mean, and there's an example of a guy who's just, it's like he's openly gay, obviously very, lives a very happy and fulfilled life, and just you could almost see him saying, "Come at me, bro." Like, nothing
Basically.
You say.
Basically, which I think is a healthier attitude than the perpetual. I heard it once I heard it once called suffering porn. That this is something the left does, because we can't possibly, like, the left seems to celebrate. Well, not celebrate, but they're too focused on victimhood instead of heroes and overcoming things. It's really just a narrative that things are bad. And I I don't want to derail the conversation, but that's just another one of the things that I hate. You can tell stories of people who have gone through hell, but there should be an arc of progress embedded in there. Instead, it's just everything is bad, and that's the way things are. But at least I'm me, and I believe what I believe. And it's like, I mean, yeah, take comfort in that, but you're literally just, I don't know. It's not a helpful narrative.
It's like if you start out depressed, everything's a pleasant surprise. Um, yeah, okay. So, wow, it seems like time just flies by. It's already an hour so far.
No, yeah.
Um, so you mentioned something a minute ago about like every accusation is a confession,
Yeah.
and it reminds me of you're probably familiar with them, but the Midas Touch Network, the Mysalis brothers who do like a political do a political podcast and YouTube channel, and Ben Mysalis, one of the guys, is actually in California, and he uses that slogan a lot, as you know, basically every time someone on the right in the political side says something, they're trying to toss shit across the aisle to, you know, it's like to deflect against themselves because they're the ones that are actually doing these things. They're the ones that are actually engaged in this stuff. It's like, you know, it's like everybody on the left is, you know, is stealing from people. It's like, you know, don't look at me, nothing to see here, you know, trying to deflect away from the things that they're actually doing to people. Um, Speaking of politics, since I brought it up, um, yeah,
Are you gonna miss him?
am I gonna miss Justin?
Yeah.
So I have, like, again, firmly on the left. I almost exclusively vote. So in Canada, we have, like, I'm sure you know this, most people on the left have more education than people on the right when it comes to politics outside of the United States. But in Canada, we have a true three-party system. So we have the Conservatives, which would be your GOP. We have the Liberals, which would be your Democrats. And then we have the NDP, or the New Democratic Party. The best way to describe the NDP is if Bernie Sanders was Canadian, he'd lead the NDP.
Okay. Yeah.
Or maybe now AOC. If AOC was here, she'd lead the NDP. So we have a true three-party system. Now, the NDP struggled for power. So it's mostly, but even our conservatives are still center right.
Right.
They're not as polarized as it is where you guys are. So having said all that, I voted for Justin Trudeau 3 times. He had 3 elections. I voted for him 3 times. If I had the chance to vote for him a 4th time, I probably wouldn't. I think he got a little too lackadaisical. I think he got a little too apathetic, and it was probably time for new leadership. I still will never. I can't reconcile a conservative vote. I will never vote for Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservative Party. I will probably end up voting for Bobby Crombie is going to likely be the leader of the federal Liberal Party. I have no problem voting for a woman. We had a female prime minister once upon a time for a short period of time. But I'll probably end up voting NDP. Leader of that federal party is a guy named Jagmeet Singh, who's a Sikh gentleman. And I like a lot of what he says. He's a tough guy, and he's, again, very, very far left.
Okay. No, I actually know almost nothing about, Canadian politics. The people who I respect and trust have been discussing it a little bit, and they're kind of like, Justin Trudeau, it's funny. He's the only person in a G7 country who's still in power since Trump entered the scene. All the others have come and gone, and they're kind of saying like he's the last. He's the very last of the neoliberal world leaders, basically. And they say he kind of perfectly embodied that neoliberal kind of globalist, collectivist sort of idea and things like that. And I was like, I don't know. I guess that's kind of interesting. It's cool that he lasted longer than anybody else, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but there were so if you do a Google search of the SNC Lavalin scandal, he didn't handle that well. There's been a few things where he has dropped the ball.
Yeah.
Still a better leader than Pierre Poilievre will be. But even saying that, even when the PCs get in power, our healthcare is, nobody's going to touch that. Every politician knows, go after our healthcare, that's a death sentence.
Yeah, third rail. Yeah.
Everything. That's your third rail. You're done if you go after our healthcare. You're done if you try to like make immigration illegal if you try to do any of the things that your Mandarin Mussolini wants to do, essentially. Um, rename rename a body of water. Uh,
Yeah, the Gulf of America. Yeah.
yeah,
Funny enough, you guys have a points based immigration system. We don't. We're like the only majorly developed country that doesn't do that.
yeah. It's not. It's funny. I mean, I was born here, right? But I'm only first generation Canadian. My dad was born here, but my mom was born in Wales, so I'm only first generation Canadian. Even though I'm like, if I was any more white, I'd be transparent. Um, but uh, but yeah, it's actually I've spoken to people, and it's not easy to get into Canada, apparently. Um, but yeah, like we still bring in a lot of people because we understand, rightly so, that immigration is a strength, right? It's not a weakness. Um, Canada was built on immigrants the same way the United States was built on immigrants, and will continue to be so. So it's always been a strength and it always will be a strength. But I think one of the ways we do it well is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you become American when you move to America, whereas Canada still looks at multiculturalism and diversity as a really, really strong tenant. Like we invite you to be Canadian. We also invite you to keep all of the things that are precious and important to you about your culture and your language and everything else like that. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, America's so weird because some of the most, like, one of the most American things is Chinese food, you know? And so it's like, like, yeah, like what you said, like when you move to America, you just become an American. It's like, yeah, I mean, I think the official religion of the United States has never had an official religion, but I think it now does. And it's identity politics. And people on the left and the right are completely embroiled and obsessed with this religion. And yeah, like, but for all the focus on like, what people are and how they identify and where they're from, it is kind of, yeah, everybody kind of talks about, or like being an American most of all. And I think they should, because we have to have something that we are unified in, instead of like the left has all these diverse positions and takes and it's very heterodox. The right is way more homogenous, which is a massive benefit for them. I feel like we fight each other too much. We're obsessed with trying to intersexualize ourselves into or intersectionalize, not sexualize ourselves. And that creates a little too much infighting. So I want us to rally around something. So I gotta figure out what that's
yeah,
going to be.
you talk about religion. So I mean, yeah, I mean, so there is no Church of Canada like there's a Church of England, for example. But in the preamble to a Canadian Constitution, the third line of the preamble it says, "Whereas we recognize the supremacy of Almighty God." So it's like it's actually in our Constitution, and
Yeah,
ironically, we are a million times more secular than the majority of the United States.
yeah, that's
So,
true.
so I've always found that interesting. So, Eric, I don't want to keep you too long. I want to try to respect your time. How can people reach out to you if they want a piece of you, or if they want to talk to you, or they want to buy your book or stuff like that? How can they reach out to you?
Well, if you want to buy the book, you can. The title is a little hard to remember, but it's Rational Answers to Stupid Questions. My book's the only thing that's going to come up when you type that out, I'm pretty sure still. But you can buy it on the website is BookBaby. That's who I self-published through them. If you want to get a hold of me, I like my DMs are open. I don't get a lot of them, but Instagram, you can message me. I might not see it for like a week or something, but I read all of them. Discord, anybody can. I don't accept any friend requests on Discord, but you can message me irrespective of that. Or if you know where to click, you can on YouTube. You can email me too. So I get emails every now and then. So
That's how I found Eric. Yeah. So okay, that's really good. And all of the links to all of these things are going to be in the body of this podcast. Eric, I want to thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we'll say a proper goodbye after I push the stop button? But anything else you wanted to say?
Besides, thank you. No.